This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholahungva. Here are the headlines for Monday, August 3rd, 2020. The Winnebago tribe of Nebraska is urging tribal members to alert them if they receive suspicious seeds sent from China. The seeds are ending up in the mailboxes of Americans who didn't buy them. In a Facebook post this weekend, the Winnebago tribal government announced neighboring tribes had already started receiving these packages. The tribe says, if you receive the seeds, do not open the package and do not throw them away and do not plant them. Instead, they say you can drop them off at their office and they will send them out to the appropriate agency for testing. One Arizona tribe is receiving nearly $20 million in tax credits to fund its newest housing project. The Pasquayaqui tribe says this is the largest tax credit ever awarded to the tribe. The funding is for a unique opportunity. Single-family homeownership development using tax credits is virtually unheard of, says the Director of Housing, Keith Gregory. The Arizona Department of Housing's low-income housing tax credit program will kickstart a new subdivision on the reservation. The 40-acre neighborhood will offer 50 units of mixed income single-family housing in 2, 3, and 4-bedroom housing styles. Chairman Peter Yucupicio says giving tribal members of all income levels the opportunity to purchase a house means more members residing on the reservation. Studies have shown mixed income neighborhoods help children do better in school. According to the Housing Department, there are roughly 1,200 families on a waiting list who desperately need affordable housing. The project will focus on smart home features, high quality amenities, and green construction with solar panels and xeriscaping. Construction is set to start in 2021. Well, you know the tune, and now you can see a music video. Redbone's iconic song, Come and Get Your Love, is now released decades after the song. It's part of the new Sony Music Catalog initiative, and it's the first ever music video for a Native American band's popular song. The animated video shows historical images of Indigenous people from the 50s and 60s to modern day. At one point, an old TV set shows modern day social movements and acts of resistance. They pay homage to missing and murdered Indigenous women, water protectors, and even Black Lives Matter protesters. The video was released to the public today. And now for an update on COVID-19 numbers in Indian Country, let's go to Jordan Bennett-Begay. Jordan?
Yate Patty, Yate Shikisto Shidinae. We have COVID-19 updates from 6 tribes over the weekend. And here's a look at the numbers from our database. There are 15,504 positive cases and 648 deaths in the Indian health system. Again, that's a total of 15,504 positive cases and 648 deaths as of August 3rd. Over the weekend, the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe in South Dakota reported a total of 70 cases and 1 death on its reservation. This is an increase of 43 cases of when we last logged the tribe on July 8th. The top 2 age groups of where these cases are found for the tribe are those between ages 26 and 50 and 10 years and younger. The Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians in Mississippi announced 22 new cases and 4 deaths. That brings the total to more than 1,000 cases and 76 deaths. In Oklahoma, the Cherokee Nation reported 12 new cases, giving the tribe a total of 763 cases. In Arizona, the White Mountain Apache tribe saw 13 new cases, and the tribe now has nearly 2,300 cases and 35 deaths. And lastly, for the Navajo Nation, which spans across Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, it reported 84 new cases and 7 deaths over the last few days. The tribe also had another 57-weekend lockdown where businesses in the tribal nation were closed during this time.
Jordan, the numbers, again, we watch them grow up. What about testing? Is there any news on how many tribes are actually starting to test more and more?
There's really no news right now. A lot of it, are still some communities are wary about using the new, the Abbott ID rapid testing because they've seen it to be unreliable. But IHS continues to say on their website too that this is, a reliable, and they encourage people to keep using them.
Jordan Benbigay, thank you. And we'll be right back.
This is Indian Country Today.
On Friday, the $600 CARES Act unemployment benefit ran out. Congress is nowhere near coming up with a new round of funding to help families. What does this mean for Indian country? Patrice Kunesh has a lot of experience in economic development for tribes. She established the Center for Indian Country Development at the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis, and she worked at the U.S. Department of Agriculture as well as serving as the Deputy Solicitor for Indian Affairs at the Department of Interior. Today, she owns Pehin Haha Consulting, and she joins us to talk money, budget, and solutions. Welcome, Patrice.
And Petu Washte, Mitakuapi, and Wopila Tanka. Thank you, Patty, for inviting me to be with you today.
Well, I want to make sure I got your name right for your consulting firm, Pehin Haha Consulting.
Yes, Pehin Haha means curly hair, and it is it's part of the family history.
All right. Well, we're talking finances here today. What is the forecast, Patrice, for the economy? How long will it be affected by this pandemic?
Well, we're in this for the long haul, Patty, and the numbers from last week really do not look so good. We have now 30 million Americans on unemployment, and another 1.43 million filed just last week. We know that this is the highest unemployment rate in over 100 years, and small businesses have been decimated, and we've just seen a rash of catastrophic and compounding problems. It's really wreaked havoc on individual and family budgets as well. So as we see this unemployment, jobless rate, grow every week, we're also at this benefit cliff. As we mentioned, the $600 supplemental federal unemployment benefit ended last Friday. And that was a tremendous benefit to millions and millions of Americans. So now we're really at a turning point, a tipping point in our economy.
And how long are we looking at? Are we looking at 6 months, a year, 18 months? For
last
this economy?
last week Jay Powell spoke, and I think he was very, very real and very pragmatic. He said, and I quote, "Hope for the best, but plan for the worst." And this really means that we're in this for the long haul, and we're going to have to adjust to this new financial reality. And for Native people, we have already faced some very serious economic hardships. Despite Indian country being one of the most distinctively important pieces of the American economy, Native tribes, Native governments employed over 700,000 people pre-pandemic. So not only are we seeing the toppling of individual incomes, we're seeing the toppling of real community stability. So we really need to be careful. We need to be very pragmatic, and we need to be planful about how we get through this, both individually, as a family, and for our communities.
So what does that mean for Native families living on reservations and off reservations? What should they start doing immediately? Because, I think it's taken a while for the seriousness to set in. In March, it was this idea of, we've got this virus, but now we're seeing these unemployment benefits going away, and the harsh reality is setting in. August 1st was Saturday. Rents are due, other bills are due. What is going to happen and what does this mean for Indian families?
Well, I do believe Congress will eventually figure something out. You know, the Republicans were promoting a $3 trillion recovery package, and they really wanted to continue this income stabilization. They wanted also to provide some other benefits for businesses, and and the Republicans are saying that's too generous. That's just not necessary. But when we think about individuals not being able to make rent or pay the mortgage in June and July, here we have August. So what we need to do in Indian country, and historically Native Americans have really been living on the edge. I myself have lived on the margins with public assistance and public health and public housing. So when we look at Native American unemployment rates, we really don't have a good solid number. The data just isn't telling us exactly what's happening to Native Americans. But we do know that Native Americans, both on and off the reservation, have suffered disproportionately high unemployment. So what this means, and I really think that it applies to all of us when we look at this great economic dip, I think we need to look at both being planful, as I said earlier, and also look at this for the long term. A lot of us have not been able to budget or to save money. And what I find to be some of the most easiest things to do is what I call stash the cash. If we no longer have an income or income replacement, either through the tribe, or the state or federal government, I think we really need to take a look at where we're spending money. Now, the interesting thing is that even though businesses are closed, spending is up because we have online opportunities. So there are 4 things I think we could possibly do to help stabilize us for the long run. One is to cancel something, cancel a credit card or cancel a subscription. I know with online streaming, we have lots of music or video, TV channel subscriptions. Taking that off the plate could really be a game changer. Obviously, credit cards have high interest rates, and if we don't need them, get rid of them. I think we need to also establish some spending numbers. If we can't meet rent, if we can't pay for groceries, if we don't have our cell phones available to us, we need to figure out, you know, where we can make those adjustments. So to look at these in general categories rather than specific numbers, I think that helps us generally cope and make these adjustments. If we can create an emergency fund, and that's just a little bit of money set aside every month that can help with medical bills or buying diapers or a run to the grocery store for a gallon of milk, anything matters. Obviously, would like to have a more long-term reserve, but anything matters. And then lastly, like I said, save the money you're not spending, stash the cash. The old adage is, you know, a penny saved is a penny earned. And oftentimes we're not really conscious of the dollars and cents that add up, that go out of our wallet every single day. So these are some practical, on the margin kind of ideas, but in the long term and cumulatively, I think they could have they could be a big help.
I really like the idea of cutting something right now, because people looking at this pandemic and how it's going to affect us in 6 months, if you're out of work for the next 6 months, absolutely every penny counts today that you can save, so that you have, you know, even money for food down the line, because
right.
food banks are also being taxed by just so many people coming for any kind of food. I know people who are starting to can and starting to preserve food, understanding that in 6 months, 8 months, a year, where are they going to be financially?
Right. So you mentioned the food, and that's one thing. Obviously, we're very dependent on grocery stores, but if we can take advantage of the summer, go to the farmer's market or grow a garden. People are resorting to I won't say old fashioned, but they're looking to themselves to say, what can I do? It's a bit more about being self-determined. And I know many reservation communities and urban Native communities that are planting community gardens. And that actually is a good way, a healthy way of getting outside, which is so much better than staying cooped up inside, but also really reaping the rewards, literally, of what you've planted. And the more you're able to be resourceful and planful, looking to the future, I think it helps emotionally and gives us a big lift, but it creates resiliency and the possibility that we're going to get through this together. And we will, but it's going to take some time and it's going to take some cooperation.
I had a discussion with a friend recently, and she was talking about how her internet bill is getting so high because everyone's on their devices. And she was saying that even with their electric bill, they have certain hours where they don't use the electricity because it's more expensive.
Yes.
And so she was looking at putting into place a similar policy for electronics, the internet connection, so that it's not so high, because looking down the road, how can they sustain that?
Yeah.
So really it's hard, I think, for people to really get that understanding of what this is going to be like in 6 months or 8 months when people are still not working, still not going out, and yet, you still have to feed yourself. You still have to, to care for the car, to get around and things like that. So you really have to wrap your head around the situation that we're in right now. And it's hard to, I think, bring the images together when you're seeing people who are out and enjoying restaurants or out, even taking vacations. It's this reality of what are we really in?
Right. And I think you're so right on, Patty. And it really is about our priorities. What really matters to us most? And when we look at the need for transportation and food, we put those first. We make sure we have our basic needs cared for. Then we can go on to help and support others and really look forward to a good, healthy future.
All right. Well, Patrice Kunesh, thank you so much for joining us. And again, looking at the forecast down the road, we're going to be in this for at least, a year?
I think it's 6 months to a good year. It's going to be a long-term recovery process.
All right. Patrice Kunesh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back. Dalton Walker joins us now to talk about some of the stories he's been recently covering for Indian Country Today. Welcome, Dalton.
Bonjour, Patty. Miigwech for having me.
Well, let's start, Dalton, with the funeral service for John Lewis, a longtime congressman who had a huge impact in Indian Country. Tell us about some of the tribal leadership who paid their respects to him.
Well, once we learned of Lewis's death, I believe on July 17th, we quickly saw kind of the natives in Congress share their thoughts and the impact he made on them. More outspoken ones were Congresswoman Deb Haaland and Congressman Tom Cole. Both shared this detail of their experience working with Lewis and kind of what they took from his leadership, because, like you mentioned, he was a long-serving congressman who impacted arguably a lot of people around the world.
Yes, and so looking at how he worked with, especially Representative Tom Cole, who has also had a long distinguished career in Congress. Any stories in particular that stood out?
Well, it was neat because we just didn't hear from elected officials in this case. Like Tom Cole did say some great things, which is really neat because he's a longtime Republican. But we also heard from a group of Native youth, and it's always neat to hear that perspective from our young people and what people across the country that are in these leadership roles who have made an impact. And I believe the presidents of the Unity Native Youth Organization got together and issued a powerful statement about Lewis and his actions, especially as a young person, and how he handled life alongside with Martin Luther King Jr. and what happened back when the civil rights was really pushed.
Wow, so great to see the youth also acknowledging their elder. Another story you worked on was the story about the Iroquois national team and their role in the World Games. What exactly is the World Games?
The World Games is similar to the Olympics. It's just not as well known. They usually happen with international competition a year after, or the summer after the Summer Olympic Games. So in pre-pandemic, it was scheduled for next summer, 2011, but because the Olympics rescheduled, it's set for 2022 in Birmingham, Alabama. And it features a lot of sports that aren't really featured in the Olympics. They're kind of unique, they're interesting. Like, for example, the tug of war, water ski, dance, some archery, a number of other sports. It's usually almost 2-week events. So there's a lot of stuff happening. And I believe lacrosse, which is kind of the news peg here, that's also featured.
All right, and so what is the effort here? Why is there this petition going around to get the Iroquois team to play at the World Games? What's the problem?
Well, with the COVID-19 pandemic, sports of any kind tends to make news of sorts because we haven't seen sports for weeks. In late July, we started to see talk about the Iroquois Nationals not being included in the coming World Games. And it seems silly for the team to not be included, especially with it being on the homelands and being in Turtle Island on the United States. And there was a push on social media that caught fire of an older article that kind of was published in March regarding the Nationals pushing to be included with the Olympics. The Olympics doesn't feature lacrosse right now, but it sounds like they're leaning that way in 2028, I believe. And then people started talking about the World Games. Why can't they compete in there? And people were confused, frustrated. And I believe a former player started this petition, which I believe is around 48,000 now in support of the team being included. And this petition was only started a couple of weeks ago.
And the invitation that the World Games sent out did not include the Iroquois team, right? Even though they had ranked pretty high in a recent tournament?
Yeah, the Nationals are a powerhouse program. I'm not the biggest lacrosse person. I wish I was more familiar with the game. I wish I could play, but I do know the history. And if you can't really talk about lacrosse without recognizing the Nationals and the impact they've made throughout history, and including the impact they've been playing on the indoor and outdoor world championships. So they're really good. They've beaten Team USA, they've beaten Team Canada. So they're not like some up and coming team. And they have power players who play professionally and are often acknowledged as the best of the group. So they definitely have the talent. And when the idea that the World Games weren't including them, people were wondering why. And recently the World Games with World Lacrosse issued a statement saying that they're looking at changing the format. It didn't really say that they were including the Nationals, but I think it caught their attention because they were pretty quiet over the last few weeks about this with this onslaught of social media wave. So for them to come out and say they're looking, I think that's the right direction, but we'll see what happens.
Quickly,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
quickly talk about the cultural tie of lacrosse to the Iroquois.
The Iroquois Nationals. Well, one answer I was hoping to get was simply why aren't the Haudenosaunee or similar nations included in the rule book? And I was looking at, well, the World Games acknowledges the Iroquois Nationals on their website and explains how culturally rich lacrosse is to them and how they are the founders of the game. But yet here we are, and they don't have an invite, even though one could argue they could definitely take top three, maybe even take first place.
All right, Dalton Walker, thanks for joining us. And thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Tholohungva. Join us again tomorrow.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing Rock.
This is Indian Country Today.